Millionaire needed a fake wife for his sister's wedding until he saw the woman he couldn't forget. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. Our story today is titled, Millionaire Needed a Fake Wife for His Sister's Wedding, until he saw the woman he couldn't forget. A cold drizzle washed over downtown Boston that morning. The skyline shimmered behind a curtain of mist as cars crawled through the narrow streets of Back Bay. Inside a corner cafe, a young woman sat alone by the window, her violin case tucked between her boots and a half-finished cup of coffee growing cold beside her. Her name was Tessa Moore. At 27, she was a violinist for hire weddings, birthdays, anywhere that paid enough to keep the lights on in her small studio apartment. But lately, even the music had stopped paying the bills. Her father's hospital debt had swallowed every cent, and the landlord's final notice sat folded inside her coat pocket like a silent threat. Outside, a black car stopped by the curb. A tall man in a charcoal suit stepped out, his shoes splashing through the puddles. The cafe door chimed as he entered. His presence seemed to shift the air. Conversations quieted. Even the barista straightened her posture. He scanned the room once before walking toward Tessa's table. "Miss Moore?" His voice was calm, deep, deliberate. She looked up, puzzled. "Yes. Do I know you?" He extended a business card embossed with silver letters. Cole Harrington, Harrington Capital. She blinked, confused. "Wait, the venture firm guy? Why would someone like you—" "I need a favor," he interrupted smoothly. "It will sound strange, but hear me out." He sat down across from her without waiting for an invitation. The confidence in his movements made it impossible to refuse. "I need someone to play a role," he said quietly. "For one weekend only. You would pretend to be my wife." Her eyes widened. "Excuse me? Not for real. My sister's wedding is this Saturday. The family expects me to bring my wife. Long story, but breaking their illusion now would cause chaos." She almost laughed, thinking it must be a prank. "You are serious?" "Completely." He slid a folder toward her. Inside was a contract printed in fine, sharp font. 3 days. Rehearsal dinner, ceremony, family brunch. Payment $50,000. All expenses covered. Tessa stared at the document, her heart racing faster than she wanted to admit. She remembered the eviction notice waiting on her door, the unpaid hospital bill, the violin lesson she had lost that morning. The offer sounded absurd, yet $50,000 could save everything. She tried to steady her voice. "You could hire anyone, Mr. Harrington. Why me?" Cole's gaze held hers, cold but curious. "Because you do not belong to my world. No one would suspect a thing." The hum of the espresso machine filled the pause between them. Rain tapped against the window, each drop like a countdown to a choice that could change her life. She exhaled slowly, eyes on the contract. 3 days, she repeated. "No feelings, no mistakes." "Exactly," he said. She picked up the pen resting beside the folder, the weight of it heavier than gold. And as she signed her name, she had no idea that this was not the first time their paths had crossed, and certainly not the last. That night, Boston's skyline gleamed through a veil of mist. Cole Harrington stood by the window of his penthouse, the lights of the Charles River reflecting in the glass like restless thoughts. He was used to control numbers, deals, outcomes, but this decision felt strangely personal. On the marble counter beside him lay the signed contract, her name written in clean, careful script. Tessa Moore. For years, Cole had avoided the spotlight. His family expected perfection from him, and after his ex-fiancée had humiliated him in the press, he had learned that emotions were liabilities. This fake marriage was supposed to be damage control, a necessary mask for his sister's wedding, nothing more. But as he replayed the brief meeting at the cafe, he remembered her eyes, steady, cautious, real, and for the first time in a long while, he felt uncertainty. The next morning, the drizzle had lifted. Boston's air smelled of wet brick and roasted coffee. Tessa waited outside the Harrington Capitol building, clutching her worn violin case like a shield. The lobby's marble floors gleamed beneath her sneakers, and she caught her reflection in the elevator door's second-hand coat, nervous smile. She whispered, "You signed up for this, remember?" When the elevator opened, Cole's assistant, Morgan, greeted her with professional cheer. "Miss Moore, Mr. Harrington is waiting. May he sit?" Tessa followed into a conference room larger than her entire apartment. Sunlight spilled across the table where a neat folder sat beside a cup of untouched black coffee. Cole entered a moment later, crisp in a navy suit, carrying the same calm that had unsettled her the day before. "Good morning. Sit, please." He opened the folder and began outlining the plan. 3 appearances: rehearsal dinner, ceremony, and family brunch. A shared backstory: they met at a charity concert in Providence, dated for a year, quietly married 6 months ago. No public contradictions, no personal questions, and absolutely no journalists. Tessa nodded, trying to keep up as he spoke. "What about your family?" she asked. He glanced at her. "They will believe what they want to believe. They always do." There was no warmth in his tone, only weary precision. Morgan handed Tessa a tablet with photographs of Cole's family, important guests, and a list of topics to avoid. "You will have a stylist and etiquette coach this afternoon," Morgan said. "Wardrobe fitting at 6. Tessa managed a polite smile, though her stomach twisted. This was not a simple gig anymore. It was a performance for an audience that could destroy her if she slipped. As they reviewed the schedule, she noticed something: an old photograph tucked behind Cole's paperwork. It showed him standing beside a small sailboat, laughing freely, without the polished stiffness he wore now. She pointed to it. "Is that you?" He looked down, startled for a moment. "Yes. Years ago." He slid it back into the folder. "That version of me retired a long time ago." Silence filled the room. Finally, he added, "If you have any doubts, Miss Moore, this is the time to walk away." Tessa straightened her shoulders. "I have no doubts, just nerves." "Good," he said softly. "Nerves mean you care about getting it right." Hours later, the transformation began. A stylist named Chloe swept into the suite like a gust of perfume and fabric samples. She measured Tessa's frame, tutted at her old shoes, and declared, "By tomorrow, no one will know you are not born into money." Cole observed from the doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. When Tessa stumbled slightly in the new heels, he stepped forward instinctively, steadying her by the elbow. "Careful," he murmured. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second, professional, almost polite, yet charged with something neither expected. That evening, as she left the building, Boston's streetlights shimmered on rain-slick pavement. Tessa clutched the garment bag close, feeling the strange pull of this arrangement. $50,000 and a weekend of pretending she could handle that. But why, she wondered? Did her heart feel like it was rehearsing for something more real? Meanwhile, Cole watched from the window as her figure disappeared into the city's glow. He told himself it was just business, a transaction like any other. Yet deep down, he knew nothing about her felt like a transaction. The next day unfolded like a scene from a movie Tessa never thought she would star in. At exactly 10 in the morning, a sleek black car pulled up in front of her apartment building. The driver opened the door and greeted her by name. She stepped inside, clutching her violin case and the garment bag Chloe had given her. The city rolled by in flashes of sunlight and glass, Boston alive with motion. When she arrived at Cole's penthouse, everything looked impossibly polished. Fresh white roses filled crystal vases, and floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline like a living painting. Cole stood by the kitchen island, sleeves rolled up, reviewing a checklist on his tablet. He looked less like a man preparing for a fake marriage and more like someone heading into a board meeting. "You are early," he said without looking up. "You said punctuality mattered," she replied. That earned her the faintest hint of a smile. Morgan appeared with folders, briefing them on the first event. The rehearsal dinner that evening at the Harrington family estate just outside Boston. "Everyone will assume you have been together for years," Morgan said. "They will test you, some kindly, some not. Remember the story of how you met?" Cole nodded, his voice calm and measured. "Charity concert in Providence. You performed. I donated," Tessa added softly. "You spilled champagne on my violin case." Cole looked up, slightly surprised. "Did I?" "It makes the story sound less perfect," she said. He studied her for a long moment before answering, "Maybe perfection is overrated." Later that afternoon, the fitting session began. Chloe worked with quiet precision, adjusting the gown that shimmered like champagne under soft light. When Tessa turned to the mirror, She hardly recognized herself. The reflection staring back was elegant, poised, and almost untouchable. Cole passed behind her, his reflection meeting hers in the glass. "You look," he paused, choosing his words carefully. "Convincing. Convincing is good," she said. "That is what you paid for." He hesitated, then said quietly, "It is not the word I meant." Twal. By the time evening fell, the sun had dipped behind the skyline, turning the sky over Boston Harbor into shades of silver and violet. The car ride to the estate was silent except for the low hum of the engine. Tessa's hands trembled slightly in her lap. Cole noticed and offered her a small folded card. "What is this?" she asked. "A list of safe topics," he said. "Family, art, travel, avoid politics and finance." She smiled faintly. "That leaves weather and dessert. Would come—" He looked at her, the corner of his mouth lifting. "Make it sound charming." The Harrington estate glowed with chandeliers and laughter when they arrived. The rehearsal dinner was already in full swing, a swirl of evening gowns and champagne flutes. Cole placed a guiding hand on her back as they entered, his touch light but steady. "Remember," he murmured, "you belong here tonight." They moved through the crowd like practiced partners. Relatives greeted them with polite curiosity. His mother, elegant and sharp-eyed, looked Tessa over before saying, "So this is the musician who stole my son's heart." Tessa smiled. "Only temporarily, I am afraid." The older woman blinked, unsure if it was humor or honesty, then laughed softly. "I like her," she said to Cole. As the evening continued, Tessa began to relax. The music swelled, conversations blended, and for a while, it almost felt real. When a reporter approached, asking about their relationship, Cole froze for half a second, but Tessa stepped forward. "We met because of music," she said. "He wanted silence, and I never stopped talking. Somehow, it worked." The reporter smiled, the crowd laughed, and Cole's hand tightened around hers under the table. Later, as they stepped outside for air, the garden lights shimmered across the manicured lawn. "You handled that well," Cole said quietly. She shrugged. "It is what you hired me for." "No," he said after a pause. "That was not acting." A soft wind rustled through the trees. Boston's city lights flickered faintly on the horizon. For a brief moment, they stood in silence, two strangers pretending to be something else, yet feeling the dangerous pull of something neither could define. When they returned inside, laughter echoed from the ballroom, but Cole's thoughts drifted elsewhere. For the first time, he wondered if the boundary lines in their contract were already beginning to blur. The next morning arrived with the kind of gray light that makes Boston feel older than it is. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and shining. Tessa woke early in the guest suite of the Harrington estate. She stared at the ceiling for a long moment before sitting up, the reality of her situation sinking in again. She was in the home of a millionaire, pretending to be his wife. Every word, every glance mattered. When she stepped downstairs, the smell of fresh coffee and buttered croissants filled the air. Cole was already at the breakfast table, reading a newspaper, a habit that made him seem even more distant. He looked up briefly. "Morning, Mrs. Harrington?" His tone was light, teasing. She poured herself coffee, trying not to blush. "You are getting too good at that." He folded the paper neatly. "Rehearsal went well last night. My mother seemed pleased." "Well?" "She was kind," Tessa said. "Sharp, but kind." "She is both," he replied. "Just do not let her test you too much." After breakfast, Morgan appeared again, handing them the schedule for the day. The wedding ceremony was tomorrow, but tonight was the gala dinner for the foundation sponsors. It would be their most public appearance yet, filled with journalists and investors. "It is the final test," Morgan warned. "If the media believes it, the rest will fall into place." Houding. The rest of the morning passed in quiet preparation. Tessa practiced formal greetings and small talk, her posture corrected again and again by the etiquette coach. By late afternoon, she felt more like a character than a person. When Chloe zipped her into a deep green gown and placed diamond earrings at her lobes, she hardly recognized herself. As they rode together to the hotel ballroom, the city glowed in golden evening light. Cole adjusted his cufflinks without looking at her. "Tonight, you will see what my world looks like when it pretends to care." She studied his profile, the calm precision hiding exhaustion. "You sound like someone who stopped believing in people." He turned slightly. "Belief is expensive." The gala sparkled with chatter and music. Cameras flashed as they entered, Cole's hand resting at the small of her back. For a while, they played their parts effortlessly, the powerful man and his charming wife. But halfway through the night, something shifted. An older guest asked about their love story again. Cole hesitated, his old instinct for control freezing him mid-smile. Tessa stepped in, voice soft and steady. "It started with music," she said. "He thought I was too loud. I thought he was too serious. But sometimes, balance finds its way." The crowd laughed warmly. Cole looked at her with something close to wonder. Later, they slipped away from the noise, stepping onto a balcony overlooking the Charles River. The night was cool, the air filled with city hum. She leaned against the railing, the sequins of her dress catching the light. "For someone who says he hates pretending," she said, "you are very convincing." He smiled faintly. "Maybe because I have had practice." "And me?" He looked at her. "You do not pretend well enough. That is what makes you dangerous." For a heartbeat, they said nothing. The distance between them narrowed until the tension felt electric. Cole looked away first. "You should rest. Tomorrow will be a long day." As she turned to go, he added quietly, "Thank you, Tessa. For tonight." She nodded, not trusting her voice. The city lights flickered on the river below, and for the first time, she wondered if her heart was keeping up with the role she was only supposed to play. The day of the wedding dawned bright and windless. The kind of crisp Boston morning that made the city shimmer like glass. The Harrington estate was alive with preparations. Florists hurried across the lawn, caterers carried trays through the halls, and the sound of string instruments drifted faintly from the ballroom. Tessa stood in front of the mirror in her dressing room, wearing a pale silver gown chosen by Cole's mother. Her hair was pinned into soft waves, elegant but understated. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Cole knocked once before stepping inside. He was in a tailored charcoal suit, calm as always, though his tie was slightly crooked. "Ready?" he asked. "I've been ready since the contract," she said, half smiling. He met her eyes in the mirror. "You look—" He stopped himself, clearing his throat. "Appropriate." She turned, laughing quietly. "You really need to work on compliments." "Too all." "I will add it to my list," he said. And for a moment, the tension between them softened. Outside, guests began to arrive in sleek cars. The family photographer directed everyone into position. Cole's sister, radiant in her gown, hugged Tessa tightly. "You are even more beautiful than Cole described," she whispered. Tessa froze for a heartbeat, unsure how to respond. Cole had described her? When it was time for formal introductions, Cole guided Tessa through the crowd. Reporters lingered near the garden archway, snapping photos as they smiled on cue. Everything felt choreographed, every word, every touch. Yet when their hands brushed, the heat that surged between them did not feel staged at all. During the reception, the speeches began. Laughter, toasts, champagne. Tessa watched Cole across the table as he spoke with his family, polite and restrained. For a man surrounded by everything money could buy, he looked impossibly alone. When their eyes met, she lifted her glass slightly, and he mirrored the gesture, the smallest acknowledgement that they were in this together. Later, under the twinkling lights of the dance floor, Cole extended his hand to her. "One dance. The cameras expect it." She smiled. "Always the businessman." The orchestra began to play. As they moved together, the noise of the crowd blurred into silence. His hand rested gently at her waist, and for a moment, the contract, the lies, the expectations, everything disappeared. "I have not danced in years," he murmured. "You are not bad," she said softly. "A little stiff, maybe." "I was told that before," he replied. "By who?" He hesitated. "Someone who mattered." They moved slower, the rhythm carrying them somewhere quiet, somewhere real. Then the music stopped. A hush fell over the guests. Tessa followed Cole's gaze to the terrace doors, where a woman in a red dress stood with a phone in her hand and a knowing smile. It was Evelyn, the ex-fiancée, who had once humiliated him in public. She stepped forward, voice dripping with triumph. "Congratulations, Cole. Or should I say, congratulations on your little arrangement." Gasps rippled through the crowd as she held up her phone. On the screen glowed a photograph of the contract. His signature, Tessa's name, the terms. Tessa felt the world tilt beneath her. Reporters whispered. Cameras lifted. Cole's expression hardened, his control unraveling in slow motion. He stepped between Evelyn and Tessa, his voice low but sharp. "This is not the place." "Oh, I think it is exactly the place," Evelyn said. "You fooled everyone, but not for long." Tessa turned away as flashes erupted around her. Every pair of eyes in the room burned with curiosity, judgment, and betrayal. The music stopped completely. Cole reached for her, but she pulled back, whispering, "You said no one would get hurt." Then she walked out into the cold Boston night, the sound of her heels echoing against the stone like a heartbeat fading into silence. Rain returned to Boston that night, thin and cold, tracing silver lines across the glass of Cole's car as it sped through the city. He had left the wedding abruptly after Tessa disappeared, leaving behind the wreckage of what was supposed to be a flawless event. The headlines were already spreading online photos of the confrontation, whispers of fraud, speculation about the mysterious woman in silver. For the first time in years, Cole did not care about his reputation. He cared only about finding her. Tessa, meanwhile, had gone back to her apartment in South End. The gown was gone, replaced by an old sweater and jeans. She sat by the window with her violin beside her, staring at the streetlights that blurred into soft halos in the rain. Her phone vibrated again and again with unknown numbers, reporters, and messages from Morgan begging her to answer. She turned it off and let the silence swallow her. The apartment felt smaller than ever, the air heavy with shame and confusion. When Cole finally knocked on her door hours later, she almost did not open it. But the sound of his voice, low, exhausted, sincere, made her turn the lock. He stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat, tie gone, eyes darker than she had ever seen them. "Tessa," he said quietly, "please listen to me." "You should not be here," she said. "They are probably following you." "I do not care," he answered. "You need to know the truth." He stepped inside, careful, as if afraid to break what little trust remained. The contract was real, he admitted. But the reason it leaked was not Evelyn alone. Someone from my own company wanted to destroy me. She just delivered the final blow. Tessa crossed her arms, trembling. So this was all business after all. "It was supposed to be," he said, "until you made it something else." He moved closer, his voice rough. "You walked into my life pretending, and somehow you became the only thing that feels real." She shook her head. "Do not say things like that, not after everything." "I mean it," he exhaled sharply. "Before you, I thought love was just another form of risk management. Then you looked at me like I was still human." The room went quiet except for the rain tapping the window. Tessa looked away, her throat tight. "Do you know what it felt like, standing there while everyone stared? They think I am a liar, Cole." He nodded, guilt cutting through his composure. "Then let me fix it. I will tell them everything. Publicly." She shook her head. "That will ruin you." "Then let it," he said. "You were never a mistake." Tessa wanted to believe him, but the wound was too fresh. She stepped back, voice trembling. "You built this lie, and I stepped into it. Maybe we both forgot it was never meant to last." Cole looked at her one last time, rain glistening on his face. "If you walk away now, it will be the only thing I regret." She whispered, "Then regret it," and closed the door. Outside, the rain poured harder, washing over the city as Cole stood motionless on the steps, the sound of the violin echoing faintly through the thin walls, a melody that was half sorrow, half goodbye. The next morning, Boston woke to a storm of headlines. Every news outlet carried the same story, the Harrington marriage scandal. Photographs of the leaked contract filled the screens, and online forums buzzed with rumors. Some called it a publicity stunt. Others called it fraud. Cole's phone rang endlessly, but he answered none of them. The empire he had built on control and calculation was crumbling, and for once, he did not care about salvaging it. He sat alone in his office, staring out at the fog-covered skyline. His board demanded an emergency meeting. Investors threatened to pull out, yet all he could see was her face when she closed the door the night before. Every word she had said echoed in his mind like a verdict he could not appeal. When Morgan entered, she placed a stack of reports on his desk and hesitated. "Cole," she said carefully, "if we do not issue a statement, they will assume the worst." "Then let them," he said. "You do not mean that." He looked up. "What I mean is that the truth does not belong to them anymore." Morgan studied him, her tone softening. "Then at least make sure she knows it. She is paying for a story that was never hers to tell." Cole's jaw tightened. "Find out where she is performing tonight." By evening, Tessa had accepted a temporary job at a small downtown restaurant, playing violin for tips. She needed the money, but more than that, she needed the music. It was the only thing that reminded her who she was before all of this. As she played near the window, customers murmured softly, the notes floating through the air like fragile glass. She closed her eyes, letting the melody drown out the noise of gossip and pity. Then, in the middle of her song, the door opened. The quiet chatter stopped. Cole stood there, rein on his shoulders, eyes fixed on her. For a moment, neither of them moved. The restaurant owner whispered something, and the staff froze, sensing the tension. Tessa lowered her violin, her heart pounding. "You should not be here," she said again. "I had to be," he replied. "You deserve to hear this from me, not from the papers." He stepped closer, his voice steady but raw. "I am resigning from the firm tomorrow. I will tell the board the marriage was staged and that you had nothing to do with it. They can have my company, my name, whatever they want. I am done hiding behind contracts." She stared at him, disbelief mixing with pain. "You would lose everything." "I already did," he said. "When you walked out that door." The crowd was silent. Even the rain outside seemed to hold its breath. Tessa looked at him for a long moment, trying to find anger. But all she saw was honesty, the kind she had begged for when this began. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. "Because you were right," he said. "It was never supposed to last. But I want it to." He reached into his coat pocket and placed a folded piece of paper on the table beside her violin. It was the old contract ripped neatly in half. "No more pretending," he said quietly. "Not for anyone. 20-0. Then he turned and walked out into the rain, leaving the door open behind him. Tessa looked down at the torn pages, her reflection shimmering in the puddle of water they left behind. For the first time, the world seemed silent enough for her to hear her own heartbeat. The next day, the storm reached its peak. Morning headlines showed Cole standing before a line of microphones outside his company headquarters. The world expected denial or excuses, but what they heard instead silenced every room. "My name is Cole Harrington," he said clearly. "The marriage was not real, but the woman you have seen in those photographs is. She is honest, kind, and undeserving of the lies that surround her. The contract existed because I was too afraid of being honest. That ends today." He held up the torn pages of the agreement for every camera to see. "I am stepping down as CEO effective immediately. I am responsible for this deception, not her. If integrity costs me my career, then I will pay for it." The video spread within hours. Some called it reckless, others called it brave. For the first time, the city saw not the millionaire, but the man beneath the suit. Tessa watched the broadcast from her apartment, tears gathering before she realized she was crying. Every word felt like a confession meant for her alone. When he said her name at the end, "Tessa Moore deserves to be remembered not as a scandal, but as the person who reminded me what truth sounds like," she covered her mouth to keep from sobbing. Outside, the rain had stopped. Boston's sky cleared to a pale winter blue. Without thinking, she grabbed her coat and hurried into the cold. By sunset, she found herself at the Harrington Foundation Hall, where a new exhibit had been announced that morning. The Art of Second Chances. She stepped inside and froze. The entire space was filled with photographs and sketches of street musicians, small cafes, and the kind of quiet corners where real people lived. At the center hung one painting unlike the rest, a woman playing violin in the rain. The caption beneath it read, "For Tessa." Cole stood a few feet away, no longer surrounded by cameras or security, just watching as people passed through the gallery. When he saw her, the noise faded to nothing. "You did not have to do this," she said softly. "I did," he answered. "You once told me I should stop pretending. This is me doing that." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she reached into her pocket and placed something in his hand, the torn half of the contract she had kept. "I guess we both learned how to end things the right way," she whispered. Cole smiled, the first true smile she had ever seen on him. "Maybe we should learn how to begin again, too." Hull? As the lights dimmed and the city glowed through the tall windows, Tessa realized the sound filling the hall was not applause or chatter. It was the faint, familiar rhythm of a heart learning to trust again. A year later, Boston had traded its winter gray for spring sunlight. The streets of Beacon Hill glowed with fresh leaves and warm laughter. Inside a small rooftop cafe, overlooking the Charles River, the air smelled of espresso and rain-soaked brick. Tessa tuned her violin beside a small bandstand while guests mingled below. It was the grand opening of the Harrington Arts Foundation School. a community project built from Cole's donation and her design. She looked across the terrace and saw him talking to a group of students, sleeves rolled up, no bodyguards, no cameras. He looked different now, lighter somehow, as if shedding his old life had made room for something better. When his eyes met hers, the noise around them blurred into a hum. Cole walked over slowly, carrying a small velvet box. "They keep asking if we are going to perform tonight," he said. She smiled. "You would not survive on stage." "Probably not," he said, his voice soft. "But I can try this instead." He opened the box. Inside was not a diamond ring but a folded sheet of paper. The same one she had given him at the gallery, now pressed flat and framed beneath glass. "This is the only contract I want to keep," he said. "No terms, no signatures, just trust." Too well. Tessa's throat tightened. "You really are terrible at keeping things casual." "I've had a lot of practice failing at it," he said with a small grin. "Tessa, I do not want this to be a story about redemption or scandal. I just want it to be about us, about what happens when two people stop pretending." He reached for her hand. "Will you stay?" She looked around at the school, the music, the children laughing, the world they had built from ruin. "I already did," she whispered. He slipped a simple silver ring onto her finger. It was not extravagant, but it was real, and it fit perfectly. Applause rose from the guests who had witnessed the quiet exchange, but Tessa only heard the steady rhythm of his breath beside hers. As twilight deepened, she lifted her violin and began to play. The melody floated through the evening air, soft and full of warmth. Cole stood behind her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder, watching the city glow below them. This time, there were no contracts, no lies, no secrets, only the sound of two lives finding harmony at last. And when the final note lingered in the air, Boston's lights reflected in her eyes like the promise of something endless.